Okay, in the last class period, which seems so far back now, I mean a whole week is like eons of time. I talked about supply and demand, is that correct? Did I talk about supply and demand in here? I did. What was the last thing? Did I talk about...
Taxes, the velocity.
Okay, I didn't yet introduce the graphs of supply and demand, which I intend to do today. And it's going to go rather rapidly so that we can get to the application of this in the coffee exercise as a practice of the use of supply and demand. Now, some of you may have had supply and demand before. How many of you have already had supply and demand before? Oh, okay, a few of you. Then when we get to the point of practical application of the coffee exercise, I'll be calling on you first. Isn't that horrible? You got to raise your hand, and now I'm going to be calling you. I'm going to be asking you to be the first ones to illustrate those. But don't worry, I'm going to explain what it all is and how it's used. And I do it a little bit differently in this class. There's some particular way that I illustrate supply and demand so that it tells a story. It gives the full explanation about why it's used the way it is. And so I ask that you replicate that style on your exam. Okay, so now we had talked about the use of the principles of supply and demand in exchange, but I'm going to graph that out in sort of a picture form so that it tells more of a story, that you can see the explanation for things at a glance. So you don't have to have long sentences and words and vocabulary and everything. You can just, at a glance, you'll be able to see what's going on in the economy with things that are measurable by money. So it's not a measurable thing of everything. There's a lot of things that we don't like to associate with money. An example is that people in Tonga don't like to associate their property, their land, with money, with transactions. I mean, you can use it, you can be a guest, but the idea of buying and selling land in Tonga is taboo. You don't do that. It's part of the family. Now, people don't think anything at all of buying and selling land in most of the world because, we do it all the time. But there are other things that we don't associate with money, at least directly. People, let's see, I can give some other examples here of things that we might think of as a taboo that isn't a taboo in some other countries. I had talked a little bit already about how people don't like to think of the buying and selling of body parts with the association of money. It becomes a sort of a taboo thing if you associate money with it. Here's a story that came out of Solomon Islands. Fearing skyrocketing inflation and the cost of marriage, a provincial government says a man can't pay more than $600 for a wife. The government of Tuamotu province in the former British colony in the Pacific passed legislation this week setting the maximum price for a bride. Well, a bride price or buying a wife is common among the Melanesian nations of the Pacific, such as the Solomons and Vanuatu. Anyone paying more than $600 in Tuamotu province will face a hearing before the Council of Chiefs and 3 months in jail or a fine of up to $90, officials said. The action was taken because local officials feared inflation in the price of brides, similar to what has taken place in Papua New Guinea, where the price of a wife averages around $3,000. One Papua New Guinea man reportedly paid $18,000, clearly too much. Solomon Islanders say a wife can still be had for less than $300 in more remote areas of the country. Wow. Okay, well, it's nothing at all to pay a bride price. And here we might consider it a shock. What? Paying money for a bride? People would never consider money and marriage in America, would they? Well, actually, yes, they sometimes do. Yeah. Here's an article about the most popular class to be taught in New York's adult education system, learning how to marry for money. Has anyone ever suggested you should marry for money? Been offered for money. Oh, well, that's even a better deal. Well, don't waste your time looking for love. Go ahead and marry for money. This is the advice dispensed at a class entitled simply How to Marry the Rich, one of the most popular adult education courses in New York City. Don't feel guilty. The rich will marry somebody. Why not you? Says Ginny Sales. She teaches a standing room only crowd in the seminar. She teaches every few weeks. Her students, most of them women, nod in assent and jot down notes. The 4-hour class is brimming with tips on finding a rich mate, an RM as the teacher puts it. And the most important thing is getting that RM down the aisle to the altar. Approaching the topic with the fervor of a revival preacher and the calculation of a business planner, she suggests setting your sights with care. Try rich heiresses, often found at charity events or art classes. Risk-taking entrepreneurs who are known to propose by the second date, or rich guys who feel guilty about their money and are most likely to marry women with children. And that is only a taste of what she says in just the first 15 minutes of the class. Still to come are tips on crashing posh parties, scope out posted signs in exclusive hotels, dressing the part, natural fibers beat synthetics every time, and practicing good manners. Getting out of a limousine gracefully is an essential skill. As in buying real estate, the 3 most important factors in finding an RM are location, location, location. Yes, as in buying real estate, find a rich mate through a job. Try a Wall Street broker. Religion. Jewish synagogues and Episcopal churches are best bets. A newspaper. Read the obituaries. A neighborhood. Move within 16 blocks of an affluent part of town. And even a parking lot. Always park next to the most expensive car. Keep at it, she says. Date anybody who is sane and breathing, but demand top-drawer treatment. If someone says they love you and they don't spend the money on you, it's a lie. And timing is everything. If a marriage proposal does not come in the first 7 months or so of a relationship, the odds drop abysmally. Let's face it, said one graduate student. If he's rich and he's a jerk, he's easier to love than if he's poor and he's a jerk. At least with a rich one, you get compensated. Okay. Well, now, to a lot of people today, the idea of marrying for money is, it seems, taboo. You wouldn't associate that. Dinner, drinks, and a movie ticket down in Waikiki, that can go ways, but not money. That can get you arrested. And the idea of marrying for money, well, actually, it's one of the oldest things in history, in prehistory. Human beings sought out security and how to get the food for the next meal and how to take care of the children. Those were always considerations. And a lot of countries still, the arrangements are made by parents, not by the lovers themselves, because it's much more erratic than it is when the parents are trying to make these arrangements. So, at any rate, in every society, there are some things you just don't like to think of as associated with money. But in this class, in economics class, we're going to associate things we talk about with money because it's easy to visualize and easy to measure. But it's not to say that money is everything. A lot of times money is just a way of indicating values. Okay, so let's take a look at this. In this case here of supply and demand, we're looking at opportunity cost, price versus quantity. I did talk about opportunity cost in here, didn't I?
Yes.
Okay. So if we're looking at the price and quantity of something, let's say Aloha shirts. We might say that it follows this basic law of demand. there is an indirect relationship between the price of a product and the quantity demanded. Now there are probably some exceptions where they talk about some goods that become more popular because they're expensive. But for the most part, you're looking at how much you have to give up to get something. And if you have to give up a lot, well, maybe you don't want as much of it as if you have to give up very little. So it works something like this. That if this is the price, let's say, 40. And this is the quantity. This is the times 1,000 Aloha shirts demanded per month on the island of Oahu. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. We might say, well, if the price of Aloha shirts, and this isn't the perfect example, it's just one that's easy to give because it's in Hawaii, but actually Aloha shirts, as I look around the room, are not very popular with students. So who are they popular with?
Tourists.
Tourists, yeah. You can always tell a tourist from a downtown businessman by their Aloha shirt, right? Well, how would you distinguish between the tourist Aloha shirt matching his and hers and the banker down on Bishop Square?
The banker would probably pay anything up from 80 and up for his shirt. You know, my lineup is all higher quality shirts than what they can buy from the swap meet or down in Waikiki. Those are all tacky ABC store kind of shirts. So.
Okay. Anything in the coloring of them? Yeah.
Yeah, they say the tourist shirts are usually more bright, eye-catching, brighter colors.
Yeah, bright colors, his and hers matching, and the men's down here in downtown, the bankers on. It looks like they turned them inside out. You know, the faded, subdued colors and all that. Yeah, and much more expensive. Well, we're just looking at the general Aloha shirt, and if the Aloha shirts are $20, well, people figure that a lot of people figured that they could give up very little to get those shirts, so they'd like a lot. But if the same Aloha shirts were much more expensive, like $80, maybe people wouldn't want as many of them. Because you have to give up an awful lot more to get it. 4 times as much. So not as many people want. And this forms the sort of the demand curve along this line, suggesting that there's an indirect relationship between the price of the product and the quantity demanded. If the price goes up, you don't want as much. If the price goes down, you probably want more. Okay. But the demand curve is always a kind of moment in time. It's not stationary. It changes depending on what are called the determinants of demand. In other words, this demand curve could move to a different position. It could be over here, where at $60, instead of people wanting this many Aloha shirts, they might want only this many Aloha shirts. And at $20, they would want maybe this number of shirts, but then it changes to this number of shirts. So what can cause this change in the demand curve? 4 things that are said to be 4 things that I'm going to give here as the determinant of demand. One is population. How many people are actually buying Aloha shirts? Another thing is income. How much money do people have to buy Aloha shirts? Another thing is the taste and preferences for Aloha shirts. And the 4th thing here will be the prices of other things related to this, the prices of substitutes and complements. I'll explain each of these. By the way, this is complements with an E, not complements with an I. Complements with an E is well, no, compliments with an I is, oh, gee, what a nice sweater you have. Okay? That's compliments with an I. I like it. Compliments with an E says, this sweater goes along with the shirt. It's a good match. Okay? It's something goes along with. That's compliments with an E. Okay, so let's give examples of these and how any one of these could change the position of the demand curve. Now, with regard to purchases in Aloha shirts, you can imagine how, and I'm going to give examples of dramatic change. It's always changing a little bit, but I'll give dramatic change so it's more dramatic. You can visualize it instantly. The United States went to war a couple times in the Middle East. And the United States, in Hawaii, we've got huge military bases. There's a large military population here. Anybody here in the military? Okay, well, anyway, there's a large military population. We've got 4 branches of the service, and as I understand it, 3 bases or recreation areas for each of the 4 branches. And a lot of personnel. So when the United States went to war in the Middle East, a lot of soldiers went off to war. And spouses and families often went back to the mainland to be with family, be with extended family. And also during wartime, in the Persian Gulf War in 1991, the Japanese economy was going down, and so there were fewer Japanese tourists who were coming. And also it was considered a little impolite to be going and vacationing in Hawaii when the United States was going to the Persian Gulf to protect oil supply lines for Japan. It also was considered to be a little bit more risky to be flying at a time when war was going on. So tourism dropped here in the islands of Hawaii because there were fewer people. And as there were fewer people, a decline in the population, what would you expect to happen to the demand for Aloha shirts? Decrease, yeah. So you would see a shift in the demand curve that at this price of $60, people may have been buying, let's say, 23,000 shirts, but suddenly they decided to buy only 8,000 shirts. They were buying fewer shirts at this price because of the shift in the population. Fewer people here. Now, after the war, and people started coming back, soldiers came back, families and spouses came back, tourists came back, the population increased. So you could expect that the demand curve would shift to the right, so that then more people would be buying Aloha shirts at this price, more people than before. Okay? You see how the shift in the demand curve can occur depending on a change in the population group that's buying shirts on the islands. The next one would be income. If the government says to everybody, well, we've got this big debt, as governments often do, and they've got the unfunded liabilities. They put a lot of money, they've put a lot of promises to pay for retirement benefits for retired public service employees and various others, but they haven't put the money aside for it. So they say, we're going to increase everybody's tax. We're going to add another $1,000 of tax to everybody's tax bill every year. Well, suddenly if you have $1,000 less to spend, are the people, and that's for everybody in the island, are they going to be buying more Aloha shirts or fewer Aloha shirts? Fewer, right, okay. So just as with the drop in population, a sudden drop of income because of that tax on people's income, so they have less money to spend, means that the demand curve is going to shift to the left. At $60, they're only going to be buying 8,000 shirts, and instead of what they were buying before. But the government could do the opposite. They might say, well, we're not going to increase everybody's tax. For all the consumers in the island, we're going to give a tax rebate. We figure that cutting people's taxes will give more money left in their pockets and they'll spend more, and we think that it's going to stimulate the economy. So we're going to give a tax rebate to everybody. Everybody in the island has $1,000 more to spend, some of which is going to be spent on Aloha shirts. A lot of things, but partly on Aloha shirts. So in that case, a tax rebate, more money left in your pocket, is likely to bring a shift in the demand curve to the right, so that people are buying more at $60 than they were before. Question about that? Anybody? Okay. The next one By the way, I do tend to rattle on fast because I don't want to be too boring for you, especially late in the evening. But that's not to mean that you can't stop me. I do want you to stop me. As I mentioned before, this is a cozy group, and a small class size is something that encourages the raising a hand, stop. If it's a question on your mind, more than likely it's also a question on other people's mind too. They would like to hear what needs to be clarified, or an illustration or example. Okay, another possibility has to do with tastes and preferences. All the time, the makers of Aloha shirts are trying to get you to buy more Aloha shirts. And they're all at the time trying to stimulate the demand for Aloha shirts. So they may say, well, we're going to hire a famous movie star. Or, I know, the best thing of all is to get a TV show that's watched worldwide, that's filmed in Hawaii. And all the time, the heroes are wearing Aloha shirts. What could that be?
Hawaii 5-0.
Yeah, Hawaii 5-0, right now, the most popular one. Prior to that, what was the most popular TV show in the world? That's way back, yeah. Probably, maybe so. But before that, I mean, tended to have a lot of swimsuits as well as Aloha shirts. Baywatch, yeah. And prior to that, it was Magnum PI, and then the first Hawaii 5-0. The makers of Aloha shirts, who used to be largely here, but now they're everywhere in the world, love it when shows are filmed in Hawaii and they feature Aloha shirts, because it motivates people to buy more. Okay, so that has the effect of increasing the demand for Aloha shirts. It can work against them too. Suppose they got a famous celebrity. There were a lot of companies that signed on to a very, very famous golfer. And they thought, wow, this golfer, if he just wears our stuff, everybody's going to buy more of our stuff. And then he got into trouble at home. And they all started canceling their contracts because the association of him with their products means people are not going to want to, it makes me cheat on my wife. Who might have that been?
Tiger Woods.
Yeah, right, okay. So, it can work the other way around too. And a lot of things can constantly work on taste and preferences that suddenly cause big shifts one way or another. If if Barack Obama comes here for vacation on Christmas and wears Aloha shirts and all, the Aloha shirt industry is going to be loving it. In fact, they'll probably send him lots of free Aloha shirts, just hoping that he'll pick one up and wear it, and they'll get in a photo op. Okay, now prices of substitutes and complements. I'm going to give an example that's in your coffee exercise that'll make this point. Not Aloha shirts, but just something else that illustrates it well, both substitutes and complements. How many people in this class will drink at one time or another coffee and at another time tea? You might drink either coffee or tea. How many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Okay, remember who you are. 15 people will drink one or the other. Now, suppose that the price of coffee goes up by 4 times. Really soars. How many of you 15 people will take that as a strong hint that you'll change your behavior? You're going to say, well, we're not going to drink as much coffee. The demand for coffee is going to fall, and instead we're going to buy more tea instead. How many of these 15 people will drink less coffee, 4 times the price on coffee? How many are going to drink less coffee and drink more tea? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. 13. That means we have 2 really hardcore coffee people. Who are those 2 hardcore coffee people? Yeah. You'll drink coffee no matter what. Tea is just a garnishment or something you drink with friends, but coffee, you can't, yeah. I think I'm kind of like that too. Okay, so of these 13 people, what would you expect to happen to the price of your favorite tea if suddenly everybody is drinking more of your tea?
Skyrocket.
Yeah, okay. You would expect, as the demand now builds for this, the price of the substitute is also going to go up. This is called the substitute effect. The price of this product goes up, so the price of the substitute is also likely to go up to some extent. We don't know how much, but it's going to cause the demand curve to shift in this direction for T. Okay. Now here's, I want you, the 13 people here now, still remember who you are. How many of you, 13, put some kind of dairy product into your coffee? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, 7. So some of you put dairy product into your coffee. Now, of you 7, how many of you are also strange enough to put dairy product in your tea as well? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All of you. Oh my gosh. Well, then my case just doesn't work here anymore.
You can take mine off.
Oh, okay, good. Okay. I've never had such a strange thought. Okay, assuming that he does not drink it, there's somebody who's going to be drinking that. So the demand for, if the demand for coffee goes down, then the complement to coffee, which is, I know how many of you 7, just out of curiosity, of the 6 who said you put dairy product in there, how many of you put more, the same amount of dairy product or less of the dairy product in your tea? How many put more of the dairy product in your tea than in your coffee? How many put the same amount? How many put less in your tea? Good, okay. So we have at least some of this example that's going to go on here, although it's offset by something. Anyway, okay, normally, in a normal class, if people are drinking less coffee, they are also putting in less of the dairy product, and so therefore the price of the dairy product is likely to be going down. This class throws it all off, but anyway, that would be known. If it did happen, it would be known as a complementary effect. Complementary effect. So if the price of this product goes up, the price of the complement goes down, assuming that this one person less is drinking the cream in the product in tea than they've had in coffee. Any question about that? So that can also affect an increase in the price and a decrease in the price. An increase, a shift in the demand curve to the right for an increase, or a shift in the demand curve to the left for a decrease. By the way, Joe Kent is filming this, and if you feel like I want you to still feel free about making comments and questions and stuff like that. But if you don't want your comments or questions in whatever he films this for, just let him know at some point to edit it out, take you out, okay? Okay, now for supply. You may be wondering why I spent all this time writing this out instead of using PowerPoint and all that. I have this sort of pedagogical theory that if I'm writing it out, it gives you clues about writing it out, and I know about the time it takes for you to write things out. And I think there's a better connect between our minds when we're doing this sort of thing.
So what do you use?
Pedagogical, meaning educational technique.
I don't even know the word.
Yeah, okay, well, now we know the vocabulary. Okay, the law of supply is this. the law of supply follows this. There is a direct relationship between the price of a product and the quantity supplied. Meaning that if it's cheaper to produce something that people are inclined to make more, if they can get more profit from something, they're likely to make more of it than if they can get less profit. If they lose income from it and take losses, they take that as a signal not to produce it anymore. If they can get profits from it and make money, then it's a signal to do more of it. That's what consumers want more of or less of. And it's derived from this phenomena here that there are costs for producing anything. And if we're talking about the cost of producing Aloha shirts, well, we have a number of things that are expenses, such as the material, the cloth, the equipment, the sewing machines, the labor cost, hiring somebody to put the pieces together, the management cost, the insurance cost, the utilities cost, the taxes, the rent, all kinds of things go into the costs of making an Aloha shirt. Now you can kind of imagine how maybe the first Aloha shirt was made. I mean, it was made with colorful, flowery Hawaiian material, Hawaiian design material. And I suspect that muumuus existed long before Aloha shirts, that maybe somebody who was making muumuus thought, well, maybe I could make something out of this material for men. It takes less material too. You know, muumuus are like body tents, they have a lot of material. So here we got Aloha shirts, and I'll just make it for guys. And they take it out to Thomas Square at a craft fair, and they find that it's pretty popular. So they say, oh, okay, well, that's pretty good. If it's really popular and I'm making a lot of them, then I'm not only going to enter the business for the first time, but I'm going to expand my business because there's a lot of people that want to do this. And then there are other people who are watching me, and they convert into the making of Aloha shirts from making muumuus, making other things. Maybe they find, wow, this is such a profitable venture that we'll make more and more of this. Now, what would make it profitable or would be if your revenue or the price you can get is greater than your cost. This is your price. This brings in your revenue for your shirt. And if the price exceeds the cost, then you have a profit. Okay, so you make a certain number of Aloha shirts. At $20, you might make 10,000 Aloha shirts. But suppose that you could get $80 for those shirts. Well, then your motive would be to make 40,000. I mean, if the price went up to a lot higher price, then your profit increases a lot. And that huge profit is a signal to you, expand your business, convert into this from other things, because people want this more than they want the muumuus that you're making. So it follows that the supply curve shows a direct relationship between the price of the product and the quantity produced. And it goes the other way too. If the price goes down, if the price really dropped a lot, such that this is your price now, then you're making losses. Every business has different expenses because some of them are really good at getting good material, but maybe they're bad at getting the right equipment. Maybe they're good at hiring people and having people being very productive. Maybe their management is poor. Maybe the insurance policy is very expensive. Maybe the utilities are they're wasteful, or maybe they pay high taxes, or maybe they're in the wrong location with bad rent. So everybody's got different expenses. But so long as their price is lower than their cost, they're going to be losing money. And that's a signal, stop doing it, or do something different. Get your costs down, or go back to making lumos, or go somewhere else. So this is a signal constantly, produce more, produce less. Now the supply curve shifts also. It's constantly moving. And so usually the supply curve shifts to the left when costs go up. In other words, your costs as a business are always changing. If the cost of materials go up, oh my gosh, we were getting our textiles from South Carolina, a textile mill there, and suddenly they doubled the price of cloth, so we got to pay more. Or maybe the equipment that we were getting, the price of the equipment went up. Or the labor force said, well, we have to be paid more or else we're going to go work for somebody else. The management drops out and you have to hire some new guy, and it takes more expensive salary to get that person hired. Maybe the insurance rates went up, maybe the utilities went up, maybe your taxes went up, maybe your rent went up. Any one of these things can say that your costs are up. So at this price of $80, you can't produce as much as before. Your costs have gone up. And it also means that at this price, if it was $20, you'd have to stop producing because you couldn't produce at all. You'd be making losses if you were still producing. So, and every company's got different cost structure. Some of them exit the business. Some of them just contract the business. Some convert out of the business. All of which is a production of less in the way of Allura shirts, fewer Allura shirts. Now there's an additional factor here other than just the costs that are direct and visible. I'm going to add in bad weather as a factor that can affect your business costs. We know, for example, that we've had a very hot summer. Seems to be going on, I've heard that it's going to go on through December. I mean, this is unusual. Well, what it also means is that probably everybody's got a higher electricity bill for air conditioning if they got air conditioning, or at least they're going out and buying fans, or maybe they've got to give people more, iced coffee breaks or something like that to refresh themselves. Or maybe people now have more qualms about coming into work. Maybe it's harder to get up in the morning because they were up sleepless night. Or really bad weather, like if we got a hurricane and lots of torrential storms. Or maybe the power went out for some time. In which case, all of those things would be adverse on our production. So I'll say that all of those things raise the cost. Now, all of these things can go the other direction too. In other words, the cost can go down to, instead of buying our material from South Carolina, maybe we suddenly got a contract to get the same quality material from Vietnam, where the price was a third of what it was from South Carolina. Maybe our equipment now, we got a new supplier of the equipment, or maybe it's the same cost, but it produces 3 times as many shirts as before. Maybe our labor costs have gone down. Maybe we were able to, with this new equipment, now we only need half as many people. Maybe our management, we've got a different manager that maybe a younger person who's more productive, maybe builds better morale with work. Maybe we found a better insurance policy. Maybe our utilities bills went down. We put in a solar panel and now our electricity bill is much less. Maybe they cut our taxes. Maybe the rent went down because an abundance of available facilities. Some business went out of business and we were able to get into their facility. And on this score, I would say we also have technology. Technology can also be bringing costs down, just as all of these other things. And you might say, good weather, where it's where you don't even need to turn on the air conditioning, We never have power outages. Okay, but technology is the kind of thing that can improve our circumstance. Maybe we found a new app that we can just take a picture of customers. We know instantly what their size are. We can have it made and sent to you in an instant instead of waiting for a couple months between the demand and supply. Okay, all of that can shift the supply curve to the right. Okay. Now we put these two things together. We put these two things together and we are able to identify a price that the market is going to come to because of these two different features in the marketplace. Two opposite laws, one of an inverse relationship of price to quantity and the other is a direct relationship between price and quantity, what famous economist Alfred Marshall called the scissors of economics, the scissors effect, that they both play a role in this. Okay, so if we happen to have a price that was very low, let's say we put in prices here to 40, 60, 80. If the price was $20, then we see that there's a certain quantity that people would want at $20. They'd want maybe 42,000. And the quantity that people would be willing to produce at $20 might only be 10,000. So in this case, we have a shortage. A shortage between the quantity that people want at $20 and the quantity that people are willing to produce at $20. And whenever there's a shortage, well, that means this guy bought his Aloha shirt, and this guy saw it, and he said, well, how much was it? So you said, $20, pretty good deal. Right? So you go into the store, and you say, well, I'd like to have one of those Aloha shirts. Oh, sorry, we sold out of those a long time back. Well, when are you getting in some more? Okay, I'll put in an order for some. So he puts in an order for the people who are making Aloha shirts, and they say, well, in order for us to keep up with this big demand for our shirts, we've got to expand our operations. We've got to hire more people. We've got to borrow more money. We've got to get more materials and hire more, buy more equipment. We've got to do a lot of things. In order to do that over what we're doing right now, we have to raise the price. Okay, so they bid the price up. So eventually you get more shirts at a higher price, and you can offer them to him. So as the price goes up, now at this price, more people are buying them, but at this higher price, not as many people want them as before. We call this equilibrium. And I'll just use an E to indicate that. This is the equilibrium. This is the largest quantity of shirts that can be made because it's where there's a match between those who want to produce equals the number of the shirts that people want to buy at that price. Well, what if the price was $80? In this case, at $80, people would like to buy this quantity. They'd like to buy 42,000 shirts. They'd like to produce this many shirts at $80. Great. But at $80, maybe they only want to buy 16,000 shirts. So in this case, you have a surplus. This guy's sitting around with shirts, a lot of shirts that nobody's buying. It's a surplus of shirts. And you see that at the Labor Day sales, you see it all the time. Whenever there's an abundance of shirts that are left over that people didn't buy, they put them on sale. They bid the price down. They say, well, I'll offer it at a lower price and hope that I can sell them off. And that's what usually happens. At a lower price, some more people will buy than before. And at a lower price, some producers will say, well, I can't make as much money off of it. I'm not going to be able to produce as much. but you still arrive at this equilibrium point. It's the maximum that can be produced in the marketplace. Now there's 4 ways that you can get to that, and 3 of these 4 ways are going to be asked of you to illustrate on the first page of the next exam, the first midterm. I'm going to erase this one too. So on the first page of your first exam, there's going to be 4 spaces for a graph. All that will be there will be an x and y axis. And then I will give you a product and a situation. And we're going to practice this next with the coffee exercise. So you then, the first thing you want to do in all of these cases is to put in the supply and demand at equilibrium, the starting point. Demand, supply, price, quantity, equilibrium. And you can do that on this one too. Demand, supply, price, quantity, equilibrium. They're all going to look like this, but don't get these 2 mixed up. There's always one person every semester who puts the demand over here and the supply over here, and then everything's off. Okay, but remember, well, you know, I've heard some people say, well, demand drops down, supply shoots skyward. Maybe that'll help, but in any case, remember, this is the inverse relationship. This is the direct relationship. And here too, demand, supply, price, quantity, equilibrium. And number 4. Demand, supply, price, quantity, equilibrium. Now, there's only 4 things that can throw a market out of equilibrium. 1, the demand could increase. We'll call this 1. 2, the demand could decrease. That's 2. 3, the supply could decrease. And 4, the supply could increase. So those are the 4 things that can throw it out of equilibrium. Now this is where I want you to pay good attention to the labeling and use of arrows and all that I put in here, because for full credit you want to be able to have the full graphic explanation. Okay, so first of all, let's say the product is Aloha shirts. And the situation is, well, let's say the government cuts the taxes of consumers, so they all have more income. Okay, so tax cut to consumers. So that means they have more money to spend. And that means a shift in the demand curve to the right. So that at every price level, including this original price, people want more than they were getting before, because they got more money to spend with that tax cut. And so now at this new demand, people want this quantity of Aloha shirts. But that leaves us at a shortage between what is being produced at that price. People aren't producing them just because people want them. They have to first bid up the price so they can afford to make more. And so when they bid up the price to a new higher equilibrium level, E sub 1 at this new price, higher price, we now have more shirts that are being produced at a higher price. Okay? All of that labeling in there, including this motive to change the price in your graph. Now we could say that the situation, the product is the same, but maybe the situation has changed. Now they say that the Hawaii 5.0 goes off the air, canceled for lack of interest in the program. So, Hawaii 5.0 ends, and so they, so we're going to assume that a lot of the people were buying because they saw those characters on television all the time, worldwide, wearing Aloha shirts, and that was cool, but now they're not. And on top of it, they canceled the program because the lead character got into a scandal and started to eat little children or something like that. There was a famous celebrity that was accused of molesting children, and he lost all of his contracts. Who was that?
Jared from Subway.
What?
His name Jared from Subway.
Oh yeah, that guy. Yeah, just this summer, but a long time ago, before your time maybe. Yeah, Michael Jackson. Yeah. Okay. So okay, in that case, the demand drops. So at that price, people don't want as many as they wanted before. So the demand is less than before. And that leaves us with a surplus of Aloha shirts that people are willing to produce at that price, but nobody's buying them. So then they bid the price down to a new lower equilibrium level. You know, there's a color coding here is kind of important to me. You don't have to use it, but if you do use it on your exam, that's always sweet. In which case, fewer are going to be consumed, produced, and purchased, and at a lower price. The next figure could be a change in the product but still Aloha shirts situation is a labor price, wages rise. Okay, the labor wages rise. In which case, that means an increase in the cost of production. And they say, okay, well, if that occurs, then producers are not going to be able to produce as much at that price because their costs have gone up. So the quantity that they're able to supply is less at that price. And so that leaves them with a shortage at that price. So as soon as it happens, they start to bid the price up to cover their costs, their rising costs. So at a new higher price, the equilibrium has shifted and the quantity that they're able to produce is less than before. Another might be a situation where the materials are cheaper. You get a whole bunch of material in at half the price as before. So suddenly that means the costs have gone down, and costs down. And so they're able to produce more at that original price than before. So the supply that they could supply would be this, but the problem is that that means that there's a surplus. People are not buying them because the price is still up. So they bid the price down so that people will buy the product. And at the lower price, they come to a different equilibrium where more is being produced than before. I feel like they close off the air conditioning at this building at 5 o'clock or something like that. I'm going to see if I can do something about it, but I don't know. Anyway, it feels like it's warmer in here. But in any case, one of these four will apply to every case in the coffee exercise. And there will be three examples like this, a product and a situation, on the first page of the first exam that you have in the course in a week or two. So I'd like you to be able to apply any one of these. So we're going to take a break now of about 15 minutes. But while we're doing that, part of it is break and part of it is look over that coffee exercise, which is in that handout that I gave to you. And I'm going to ask people to apply these to every one of the problems here except the very last one. I'll do that separately. And actually, we won't do number 9 either. Okay, now, again, could I see the show of hands of the people who have had supply and demand before? Okay, would you do number 1? And would you do number 2? I'm going to just do it up at the board. And who, have you? Okay, do number 3, 4, 5. Have you had some supply and demand before?
Yeah.
Okay, then you got an edge over those who haven't. Okay, so 5. And who over here? You've done it before, right? So 6. Would you do number 6?